Today on episode 12 of the Play Guitar podcast, I answer the question, what chords sound good together on the guitar? To do that, we're going to learn all about diatonic chords. Also, we've got some listener feedback, so stay tuned. Welcome to episode 12 of the Play Guitar podcast. I'm Lee, and this is the podcast that's determined to make you a better guitar player. No matter if you're just starting out or you've been playing for years, this is the show that'll help you become the guitarist that you always wanted to be. On today's episode titled, What Chords Sound Good Together on the Guitar, we're going to start to answer this question from all the way at the bottom. The ground zero of chord changes, diatonic chords. These are the chords with the strongest relationships, and they're the ones that are heard most often in popular music. I'll go through how to construct these chords and some easy formulas to be able to quickly know what good chords are available in any key that you need. This is a topic I get asked all the time about, and to really answer it in a way that puts you on the right track but doesn't get too deep into music theory, because then you just tune out. That has always been a challenge for me. It's tough for musicians that are well versed in theory to remember what it's like for someone who hasn't dealt with it before. So my challenge has always been to be able to get this information across in a way that's easy to understand, but it's also an easy transition if you become interested in more advanced music theory. On a quick personal note, here in the States, we're quickly approaching tax time, and this past week was my time to get everything together. So on top of my teaching, family things, and preparing a lot of content, I needed to get everything in order for my taxes. I've been overloaded, and I've put everything on hold except for one thing, this show, the podcast. So that being said, this week I've received a lot of great questions and feedback, and that's awesome. And I think at this point I've responded to everyone, but if you send in a question or comment, check again to see your response. Thank you for being patient with me this week. Things are already starting to get back to normal. And next week also marks the return of the Creating the Band segment. I've had a few people write in and ask for its return, and I'm excited about it too. So next week it's back. All this mess is behind me. I also have some cool new equipment for the show. I've got a new mixer sitting right here. It's the PreSonus Studio Live AR12 USB. It's not hooked up because I haven't had any time to plug it in yet, but I'm definitely going to make a video about this one, using it on a show and setting it up, and it's very cool. I also bought an impulse response pedal. I hope it would be here by this episode so I could use my amps for the show a little bit easier. But it turns out it's back ordered. So anyway, I've got lots of cool stuff coming, and I'm sure this week's going to be a lot of fun getting it all ready and documented. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today, and let's go ahead and get into some chord stuff. What chords sound good together on the guitar? Back in episode 5, we took a look at how chords and arpeggios are built. There was some very important information in that episode. And to summarize all that quickly, we learned that we get the notes for a chord from a scale. You know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? In music, it's the scale that came first. We need the scale notes to know which notes to use for the chord. We learned how to build our basic major scale, and we learned which notes from the scale to use to build the chords. We built the C major chord and the D minor. Both of those are triads, and we talked about what types of triads there are. There's major, minor, augmented, and diminished. And we also learned a difference between triads and seventh chords. Triads they're built from 3 notes from the scale, and the seventh chords are built from 4 notes from the scale. It was a lot to get into, but from the feedback I've received, I know that the episode helped a lot of people start to understand how chords are constructed and, without getting overwhelmed. Today, I'm going to use that information to start tackling the question of why certain chords sound good together. why you hear certain common chords together in a lot of different songs. Recently, one of my classes took a turn. In my small group classes, I always try to make sure everybody's questions get answered. But then after that, I rein things in and get back to my roadmap. And that's the method I've built over time. It takes a student all the way from beginner all the way to a gigging guitar player. But sometimes a question comes up that kind of takes over. I find that sometimes those classes are the best ones, spontaneous ones that they weren't planned, but some real breakthroughs happen for students. So one of my classes, this question came up. What chords sound good together and why? And this is a great question. And the more we got into it, the more questions came up. So that class has taken a detour from our regularly scheduled program for the last several classes. It's been great. I keep thinking this would be a great part to what we started in episode 5 here on the podcast. So we go from the how to build the chords to how to use the chords. So today I thought it's time to continue on with our look at chords. First off, I just want to make something clear that this is not a chord theory class. This is meant to be practical information to help guitarists that don't have a strong background or haven't been exposed to how chords work. But I like to do this in a way that I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking ahead for those who enjoy this kind of thing, and you may develop an interest in music theory in a way that the information I bring to a guitarist that learns this for the first time, I don't want it to what I teach now to conflict with learning more down the road, more to build a base to move on to more advanced theory. So what we learned today will not get into the technical names and ideas, but it will give you a basic understanding that you can easily build upon if you choose to look into this kind of thing further. So now that we've been through the very basics of chords in episode 5, it's time to move on down the road. How can we use these chords we've built to make some music? The first step we're going to take is to learn what diatonic chords are. There's lots of different ways that chords relate to each other. There are complex and there are simple relationships between all chords. But before diving into the complex, it's smart to have a good foundation on simple chord relationships. The definition of diatonic chords is diatonic chords are chords that are constructed just using the notes from a scale in a certain key. Diatonic chords have the strongest relationships with each other, and having a solid understanding of what they are and how to use them will give you the building blocks you need to understand how to use these chords in lots of songs. When all the chord notes come from one scale, they become a family of sounds. Each chord in the family has its own job, and all of the chords match each other. They belong to a certain tone group. So how do we create this family of chords? I touched on it a bit back in episode 5. That's where we talked about building triads from notes from the scale. Let's stay with the C major scale for today too. It has no sharps and flats. The notes of the C major scale can be thought of just like the white keys on the piano. We'll worry about the other keys with sharps and flats after we get these ideas down first. In episode 5, we built both a C major and a D minor triad. For the C major, we started with the C note, but we learned that we needed 2 other notes to complete the chord. What we did was take 2 more notes from the C scale. We skipped a note, and then using that next note, then we skip another note and use the next. The first, third, and fifth note of the scale. They're C, E, and G. Let me demonstrate that real quick. Okay, so we have, we're building a C major chord here. So we need the first, the third, and the fifth note of the scale. So here's the scale. And we're going to start with the C. That's 1. That's easy. We're going to skip the D and go to the E. For the second note we need for the chord. And then we're going to skip the F and jump to the G. And that should give us our 3 notes for the chord. Okay, next we did the same thing to get the D minor chord. But we started on the second note of the scale, which is the D. So here's C, the first note, started on the D. And we're still going to use this skipping note thing, but we started on the D this time. So here's the D. We're going to skip 1, which is the E, and get the 4th note, which is F. That's the next note we need for this chord. Skip another note, which is G, and then get the sixth note, which is A. Those are the three notes in D minor. D, F, A. There we go. There's the three notes for the D minor. We can do this using every note of the scale. That would give us 7 chords using the 7 notes from the scale as starting notes. In the key of C, that would give us chords based off of the C, the D, the E, the F, the G, the A, and the B notes. This is going to give us our family of chords. These chords built from the scale all work and sound good together. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's find out all of the chords in the C major diatonic family of chords. To do this, just like each time we do things with the major scale, we're going to give each note a number. So let's call C1, D2, E3, F4, G is 5, A is 6, B is 7. Now that each note has a number, we are ready to start building our chords. First two are easy because we've already done them before, but let's do them again here. The C triad, we get our C, and then we skip, we get the E and the G. There's our C major triad. So what we're going to do now is we're going to check it with the notes from a basic C chord that we already know, the open position C that everyone learns in the beginning. Let's find out what those notes are. It's a C, an E, a G, a C, and an E. Yep, they all match. Our first one is a major chord. Very happy sound. We go to the D chord, which we had done. The D comes from the second note of the scale. We start skipping. We get the F and the A. Let's check this with a D chord on the guitar that we all know. The notes of the open position D chord, D major chord, are D, A, D, and F sharp. Now hold on. That doesn't work out quite right. If you remember, our diatonic chord has to have an F in it, but our major chord has an F sharp. This chord is not major then. The middle note of the chord is lower by a half step. This gets us a minor chord, a D minor. Let's check it with our open position, the D minor chord, the one we all learn. So we've got D, A, D, and F. That's it. So the chord built off of the second note of the scale, it's a minor chord. Okay, let's move on to something new. Let's move on to the third note. That's an E. Okay, so we've got our E. Let's start skipping. E, we'll skip one. Next is G. We'll skip the next one, and the next one is B. So our three notes we have are E, G, and B. Let's check this with our open position E chord, our E major chord. The E chord in open position has these notes: E, B, E, G sharp, B, and E. That's right, this one doesn't work out either. We need a G. And the major chord that we're used to has a G sharp. So we need to lower that note by a half step. That will give us a minor chord again. Let's check our notes with an open position E minor chord. Let's see what those notes are. E, B, E, G, B, and E. Yep, it's minor. So we know that the chord built off of the third note of the scale is a minor chord. Let's keep going. Let's move on to the fourth note of the C major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth note is an F. And we're going to build a chord off of this F. We're going to build the F, skip one, and we're going to go to the next note, which is an A. And we'll skip another one, and then go to the next note, which is a C. So the three notes we need, F, A, and C. Let's check that one with a basic F chord that we know. We'll just play the one at the first fret. We have an F, an A C, and an F. Well, that one works. It's the same as the notes that we got from the C major scale. That's an F major chord for this one. So we know that the chord built off the fourth note of the major scale, that's a major chord. Okay, so let's keep going. Our next note is is a G. G is the fifth note of the scale. To make this chord, we'd start at G. We'd skip one and go to the seventh, which is B, and then skip again all the way up to the D. The three notes that we have for the G is G, B, and D. Let's check that with our regular G chord that we all play. Let's see what the notes are. G, B, D, G, B, and G. Yep, that works. So that one is just like it. So the chord based off of the fifth note in the major scale, that's a major chord. Okay, we've got two more to do. The A. C, D, E, F, G, A. A is the sixth note of the scale. And to make this chord, we start at A. We skip the next note and go to the C. And we skip the next note and go to the E. That's A, C, and E. Let's check that one with a regular old A chord, the open position A chord. Open position A, we have an A, an E, an A, a C sharp, and an E. Nope, we have a problem. We need a C for that note, for that middle note of the chord. So the A major chord has a C sharp. We need to lower this note by one, and that will make it a minor chord. Let's check it with our regular open position A minor chord. We have A, E, A, C, and E. So that's it. That's a minor chord for the sixth degree of the major scale. We've got one more chord, the seventh degree. Our last chord comes from the seventh degree of the scale, and that's B. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So we're going to start with a B, and then we're going to skip one. That gives us a D, and then we'll skip another one. That gives us an F. So the notes in the chord that we need off to make this chord on the seventh degree, that's B, D, and F. So let's check that. Let's check that with a regular B bar chord, a B major bar chord. Let's see what the notes we have in there. We've got a B, we got an F sharp, another B, a D sharp, and an F sharp. Okay, this one is really different. Both the middle note and the last note are a half step lower than the B major chord. Lowering the middle and the last note of the chord will give us something called a diminished chord. It's a very different sound than all the rest of our chords. Let's take a listen to this chord. This chord is very tense. In popular music, you don't hear this one too much, but it does have its uses, especially in minor keys. And we'll get into the uses of this seventh degree diminished chord at another time. But most popular songs leave this one out. But there you have it. This is our family of triads for the key of C major, the most basic grouping of chords, the diatonic chord groupings for the C major scale. Okay, so we're going to give each of these chords a number, just like we gave each note of the scale a number. So we'll call the C major the 1 chord, the D minor the 2 chord, the E minor will be the 3 chord, the F major will be the 4 chord, the G major will be the 5 chord, the A minor the 6th chord, and the B diminished the 7th chord. Boy, that really wants to go to the C. Let's give it the 8th chord or the 1 chord. Back to C. There we go. All right, so every time I teach this, I like to stop right here and have a little fun at this point. I ask the class to shout out any of the chord numbers they want, and I play it for them. Then they'll shout out another one, and then I'll play that. We kind of make a song on the fly. So let's try that now. I'm going to pretend that you shouted out the numbers. How about this? 2, 6, 1, then 4, then 3, then 5, then 1. Let's play that. So here's 2. Let's go to the 6th chord. How about the 1 chord? Now we're going to the 4. to the 3 chord, the 5 chord, and then the 1 chord. It sounds like a song. They all sound pretty good together. Some better than others, but you know, there's something to that. All that was just random numbers that I picked between 1 and 7, and it turned out pretty nice. How about we do it again? Let's do a different set of numbers. Let's see, 6, 4, 5, 1, 3, 7, 5, 4, 1. Just a different jumble up set of numbers. So let's start on the 6. Here we go. We're going to the 4 now. To the 5. Back to the 1. 3, E minor. Now we throw the 7th in. Let's see if I can get to this one. Doesn't sound that great, does it? To the 5. To the 4. To the 1. As you can hear, there's some familiar sounds here. It never fails that someone shouts out right about at this point. They'd say, wait, is this how songwriters come up with chords for their songs? Aha, and that's another light bulb moment right there. And doing this is always a lot of fun. And usually I turn the tables on them at this point. And I start shouting out numbers for them to play the chords. And they sound great. Well, everything except for that 7th chord, it's rough. It usually doesn't sound that great. But let's just look at what we just created. In the key of C, the 1 was major, the 2 was minor, the 3 was minor, the 4 chord was major, the 5 chord was major, 6 was minor, and then the 7th was diminished. This gives us a formula, not just for C, but for all of the major keys. If you know the major scale of a certain key, then you know the major diatonic chords of that key. It works for all keys. Let's take a look at another key. How about A? The major scale for the key of A is A, B. Let's play that. A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and back to A. We just plug in our new formula and you'll be playing the chords in the key of A right away. So the 1 chord is A major, the 2 chord is B minor, 3 chord is C sharp minor, 4 chord is D major, the 5 chord is E major, 6th chord is F sharp minor, 7th chord is G sharp diminished, and then back to A. So go ahead and pick another key on your own and find all the strong chords in that key. Finally, for today, I want to touch on the next question that usually comes up, and that is, why are some of the chords major and some minor? And what is diminished anyway? The way we can really tell whether a chord is major, minor, or diminished is by looking at the distances between the chord notes. These distances between notes are called intervals. And intervals all have special names and sounds to go along with them. We'll get more into intervals at a later time, but today let's use something we already know to measure these distances. Up to this point, we've been using whole steps, which are 2 frets, and half steps, which is 1 fret. And you've been using those to help us with our scales. Let's use combinations of those two to find out the distances between the notes of the diatonic chords we just created. Let's take the C chord, for example. The notes of the C chord are C, E, and G. We need to find out the distance between the first 2 notes and then the distance between the last 2 notes. The first 2 notes are C and E. We have 2 whole steps between the C and the E. That's C goes to D, D goes to E. The last 2 notes of the chord are the E and the G. And between them, we have a half step and a whole step. E goes to F, F goes to G. So the distance between E and G is a half step and a whole step. So the C chord is whole step in the beginning and half step, whole step at the end. That grouping is what we're going to use as a formula for a major chord. Whenever we have whole between the first two and some combination of half whole at the end, it will give us a major chord. Let's move on to the next chord based on the D note. We found that we needed the D, the F, and the A from skipping the notes in the scale. Between the D and the F, we have a whole step, which is D to E, and then a half step, E to F. That's in the beginning. And now at the end, between the F and the last note, which is an A, we have a whole step, F to G, and then another whole step, G to A. When you have a combination of whole step and half step in the beginning, and then whole step at the end, that will always give you a minor chord, a minor triad. So let's do E now. E would be just like the D. Okay, so we have the notes we need for E is E, G, and B. Between the E and the G notes, we have a half step, E to F, and then a whole step, F to G. And then at the end of the chord between the G and the B, we have a whole step, G to A, and then another whole step, A to B. So the distance there is 2 whole steps. That gives us a minor chord because the beginning was half step, whole step, and then the end was whole step, whole step. Okay, let's try the F now. F has the notes F, A, and C. That's 2 whole steps in the beginning, F to G, G to A, and then a whole step and a half step at the end, A to C. It goes A to B, B to C. So the one we have where it's 2 whole steps in the beginning and in some combination of a whole and half at the end, that's major. So that gives us another major chord. Let's check out the G. The G has the notes G, B, and D. That's also 2 whole steps in the beginning between G and B, and a half and a whole step at the end between the B and the D. That's B to C and then C to D. There we have another major chord. 2 whole steps in the beginning, and then a half and whole at the end. Major. Let's try the A. The A we found has the notes A, C, and E. So in the beginning we have whole step, that's A to B, and then B to C. That's in the beginning. And then at the end we have 2 whole steps at the end. That's the C to D, D to E. So just like the D minor and the E minor, the A is a minor chord because it has a combination of whole and half in the beginning, and at the end it has 2 whole steps. Okay, we have one more. That's the notes for the B chord, and that has the notes we found B, D, and F. Okay, well let's try that. But the distance between the note B and D is a half step, B to C, and then another whole step, C to D. So we have a half whole between the first 2 notes of the chord. Let's try the second 2 notes of the chord, or between the D and the F. So from the D, we go to D to E, which is whole, and then E to F, which is half. That is different. That has 2 combinations of half and whole in the beginning and at the end. That's different than all the other ones, and that's why this is a diminished chord. When you have that, that's the formula for a diminished chord. Okay, that's a very brief primer on intervals, but at this point, it's great just to understand that the distances between notes are the reason why the chords sound like they do. There's a lot more to learn about intervals, but I thought this would be a great way to get your feet wet, to dip your toes in the interval pond. So where do we go from here? Here's some things to do. Try it out. Try playing the C major diatonic chords and see which ones sound the best to your ears. Try putting them in different combinations. Maybe write a little song with them. Also, try playing the 5 chord before the 1 chord. That would be a G chord going back to the C chord. It's the strongest progression between chords, that 5 going to 1. And it's great to get that sound in your ears. Also, try using this process, the whole thing, in other keys. We did C, and then we talked about A here, but you could try some other ones. Try doing the key of G. Find the diatonic chords in the key of G or the key of D, and see if you find the strong chords for each of those keys. Soon we'll be doing this process with the minor scales. Well, and we can also do it with seventh chords. So we have some stuff to look forward to. Okay, in conclusion, today we introduce what basic diatonic chords are. They're chords built from different notes in the scale. We built our chords and gave them each a number. We discovered a formula that shows that in all major keys, the diatonic chords are 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, and 7 diminished. We introduced basic intervals or distances between the chord notes and how those intervals determine whether the chord is major, minor, or diminished. And finally, I gave you some things to try the next time you have your guitar around. So now that you understand where these basic chord relationships come from, do you see anything familiar in the songs you already know? Let me know in the show notes or on Twitter. I'd love to see what you think. This is listener feedback. This is where if you have a comment or a question I can help you with, I'll try my best to help you. To get in touch, you can always email me at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com. Use the comments on the show notes page, or you can use the contact form on the site. But my favorite, the coolest way to leave a question for the show is by my SpeakPipe voicemail. When you go to the main page of playguitarpodcast.com, to the right of the screen, you'll see a button. And it says send voicemail. That will allow you to record a short message for me to use on the show. You can also get to this voicemail on my contact page. Like I said at the intro of the show, this has been a jam-packed week for me. So it's been a challenge keeping up, but thank you for bearing with me if it took a little longer than usual for me to respond. I received a great message from Carlos, who's looking for a guitar with a slimmer neck than his nylon string. He wants to use it for learning jazz and classical. He was thinking about an Ibanez AFJ85, and I recommended one of the Yamaha NTX series. It's a slim depth nylon string with a cutaway, and it's got a great pickup in it. It doesn't sound like a great big huge nylon string guitar in the room. It's just a little bit quieter than that because it's a smaller guitar, but the pickup sounds awesome. You can hear that style of guitar on any of Rodrigo y Gabriella's YouTube videos. I'm a huge fan of theirs. They use a combination of metal and flamenco styles, and they play it on 2 nylon string guitars. Highly recommended for you to listen to them, by the way. So if you have any recommendations for Carlos, what kind of guitar to get, just let me know and I'll pass it along. Okay. Thanks to Brad for reminding me to add iHeartRadio to the list of places you can download the show. I've updated the show notes for that page. I'm going to also add a dedicated subscribe page to the website with all the links for the different places you can find the shows. But thank you, Brad, for that. He also asked if I have any YouTube videos. I'm going to start videos in the next few weeks. And if you have any requests for videos on something you're having trouble with, or something you want to learn, please let me know, as I'm starting to plan them right now. This is going to be fun. So send me requests for videos at feedback@playguitarpodcast.com. I'll be happy to try and tackle some of those. I also heard from Andrew L. again this week. He sent me a nice note about how we shared his contribution on the show the other week, and he thought the face group idea was awesome. So thank you, Andrew. There's a couple people who thought the Facebook group would be a good idea. We might just have to give that a try pretty soon when things calm down for me. But I think it'll be good. And so thanks again, Andrew, for that. Chris W., he's been really working on his lead guitar scales. He's been targeting other positions and working on his legato playing. I recommended learning the 7 position scale patterns. They help with the legato phrasing because they're 3-note per string scale patterns. You can do a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs with 3-note per strings. You'll see a lot of shred style players using these type patterns because you can play very fast with them. It's something I plan to talk more about to Chris and to all of you in the future. So look forward to that. Thanks, Chris. But before we end, I just wanted to encourage all of you to follow me on Twitter. And here's why. I've been collecting a ton of great content from around the web. And to get a page added to my collection of content, it just has to be something that I would recommend that one of my students read or look at. I have I think it's over 250 pages that I send out. I send it on a revolving basis, and I'm adding to it all the time when I find some new good content. So if you're looking for new things to practice, check out my Twitter page. I add stuff all the time, but my Twitter name is Play Guitar PDCST. One of the more popular links that I put out from time to time on that is an interview that Mark Knopfler did a while ago. And he's a great guy and an awesome player. And it's a wonderful interview. And it always gets a lot of comments and likes. And so I want to thank Alan, Jenny, Marja, and Richard for your great comments on that. It was a great interview. And you can find that on my Twitter page. Okay, so that is episode 12. That is a wrap. Thank you for joining me today for the Play Guitar podcast. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to the show in iTunes or your podcast player. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me an iTunes review for the show. If you're interested in online lessons, go on over to playguitaracademy.com and join my early adopter list to get news on the opening of the site and an early adopter discount. Also, follow me on all of my different social media pages. Links to them are at www.playguitarpodcast.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode.